It's Drybear. Dark and Darker has gone free to play on Steam after a long legal struggle keeping them off the platform. So if you didn't play Dark and Darker, or maybe you played when it first came out, when it was tested as a demo, and have wondered where it's been, today I'm going to go through all the things you need to know to play Dark and Darker and what's changed, because the game has proved quite a bit over the last year. The very first thing to cover is that the free-to-play has an asterisk on it. And when I first looked at this, I thought it was going to be more microtransaction heavy and very pay to win, but it's actually not. You just get limited in what you're able to do. When you are on the free version, you won't be able to access the ranked mode, and you'll be limited on how many character slots you have. So High Roller Dungeons is the ranked mode where everyone pays gold to enter into it, and they risk losing all of their gear. And you also want to have access to multiple character slots. You only have one, which means that you'll only be able to play one class at a time. But if you wanted to, you could pay the $30, which is what the game was originally priced at, and get access to all of these things, which I think is worth it if you end up enjoying the game, but you get to try it and play it. Now, by the way, if you're fine playing one class, you can certainly stick with that and stay on that character, and you can play the free version as long as you like. You just won't be able to have other character slots for more classes in the game. Speaking of which, they have added more classes into the game, and they are hoping to add more in as well. The first demo version that we played had Fighter, Barbarian, Rogue, Cleric, and Ranger, and since that demo version we played over a year ago, they have added Wizard, Bard, Warlock, and Druid. And the Druid is the recent addition. You can actually shapeshift into 4 different forms: Chicken, Rat, Bear, and Panther, and the shapeshifting is very natural, very fluid, and is actually one of the more popular classes right now, which is very cool. Warlock is a spellcaster that is able to use their curses and curse magic to debuff and deal fire damage and curse damage. The Bard can play songs and is great in group play, though they are quite skilled with swords and function in solo play as well. And they have a cool skill shot mechanic or skill check mechanic to play the song they're playing correctly. Clerics use a lot of heavy armor and have spells, holy spells, that can deal damage to the undead, heal themselves, or deal with a wide array of situations. The Wizard is kind of like the Warlock, but more on the arcane side. They have magic missiles and fireballs, and they can rest to reset their spell casting, which they didn't always have in the game. The Ranger does ranged attacks and can actually spec into using some like one-handed weapons and maybe even a spear. And they have traps, and they have a lot of ways to interact with the environment, and they're very good at using and utilizing utility items. The Rogue can go stealth and apply bleeds and is very quick and very strong, though they generally will lose a heads-up battle with the final 2 classes. The Barbarian does tons of damage and does more damage the lower their HP is, and Fighter, which is just an all-around D&D style class that has very good use of shields, a lot of debuffs and buffs, self-healing, and things like that. So they're just very good. If you like using melee weapons, this is like the all-arounder. So that's the first thing you'll want to know about going into this as well, is that if you want to get access to these better options here, you're going to have to use some real money, and I think it's worth supporting the devs if you do like that. Keep in mind that they have also tiered out their queues. Not only is there a normal queue and a ranked queue for High Roller, so if you go to queue for something, there's going to be a different option here. So let's go over that real quick. There are 3 maps in the game currently: the Goblin Caves, the Ruins of Forgotten Castle, and the Frost Mountain. And they come in either normal, which is just play for normal, or High Roller, which is you have to be a specific level, and you also are, there's no limit to the gear you can bring. There's higher drop rates and more dangerous monsters, but you also have to pay gold to enter. This is like your ranked queue, like bring the best you've got, see if you can survive kind of thing. Additionally, there are trios, duos, and solos. So if you want to play solo or duo with a partner, you can. If you want to play with 3 people, you can. And you can even queue into 3 people while playing by yourself as well. But it rotates on a timer. So each map will be set to solos for 3 minutes, and then they'll rotate, and then the Goblin Caves will be solos, and the Frost Mountains will be solos. So if you have a specific type you want to play, you have to rotate through the maps in order to do it. It is an extraction game, which means you're dropping into the map and you try to escape with what you have, and there's tons of loot that you're collecting as well. And based on the gear that you have with you, you will get a gear score, which is shown at the bottom of your character screen. So you can actually see that down there. And that's where they separate the queue queue. If you have below a 24 gear score at the making of this video, you will be placed into the very beginner queue or the opener queue or like the no gear queue. But if you have more and more gear, it'll place you into a higher queue above 24 so that you can face against people that actually have gear, so it's a little bit more fair. And they used to have it so you couldn't have anything above uncommon in the normal queue, but they changed it just recently so you can have up to legendary gear in normal, and high roller has no grade limit. You can have any kind of gear that you want in this and just be as strong as you want. Before you jump into a game, you want to set up your skills and your abilities. So up from the main screen here, go to class, which will be for the character you're currently playing. Training just allows you to escape and extract and get tokens so you can just get random loot. And then when you go to perk and skill, this is where your main customization comes from. Every class will have something different based on what they function with. You'll have two slots here for abilities, and your skills are going to be down here, and you can slot these out as much as you want for the ones you want to use, that sort of thing. And for the melee classes, they'll usually have two abilities. For the casters, they'll have like an ability and then what's called memory slots, which functions kind of like a Souls game where you'll be able to slot in specific spells based on how big they are. They'll cost more in the memory slots, and you'll be able to choose from those spells in order to use them. And just like Dungeons and Dragons, you'll have charges for the spells, and then once you're in game, you have to recharge them by sitting down and resting. So you have to take a rest in order to get your spells back, but it functions just like a Dungeons and Dragons extraction dungeon looter. Then you'll also have these perks, these passives that you can choose. You can have up to 4 of them, and you'll have to unlock these as you go along. Now, when you're in combat, where you strike an enemy matters. So there are headshots. You can see this does 75. This does 50, and then when you hit a limb, it can do even less as well. There's 25 there as well. So getting headshots with most attacks in the game matters quite significantly. The armor type that you have and the types of stats that you have as well. You'll notice that when you go to your character sheet, you can actually go through all of these stats as well, and you can hover over them on PC to figure out what they do and what they're for. And that's part of the gearing process. You have accessories, gloves, 2 different weapon sets, you have your belts and everything, and all of these will have different stats on them. So say you want to max out your strength for melee weapon damage, maybe you want to max out your will for more spell power. It all depends on the class you're playing and the build you're going for. So you want to try and find better and better loot. And even if you don't get the loot that you want in game, you can also exit the game and buy it off the marketplace or buy it from other players. The next thing to know is about the 2 belt slots that you have for your character. You have the 3 key on PC and the 4 key, and that'll be down in the bottom right. So you'll be able to press 3, and if you press that button again, it'll cycle through all the items on that belt, and same thing for the other belt slots. These are your consumables, your utility items, your pickaxe you can use to mine ore and take it back with you and craft weapons, placing down traps using consumables. All of that is based on your belt, and you can put anything in here that fits in that slot. And you can even see that the bear form for the druid, the panther form, there's some pretty unique aspects to some of the classes they've added since their initial showing. So once a match starts, you'll be placed down, and you want to pay close attention to the mini-map in the bottom right. There is a timer above it, and that is the match length. As that gets lower and lower at a random time since the last patch, the exits will start to open, and there will be actually natural hazards that come and try to force you out of the game, but it's not the fog closing in battle royale style. You can go anywhere you want on the map. It's just as time goes lower, it'll get more and more dangerous for you while you're in. Now, once you're in, there's a couple things you'll want to be aware of right away, and that is first that you need some light because it's going to be very dark. So one thing I recommend is just using your torch, throw it down in order to light up the area so you can see what's going on, and you can always grab this again. So press 3 to go to your belt, use right click to throw the torch on the ground, especially if you're playing a ranged character like a wizard or a warlock or a ranger. You want to make sure that there's enough light for you to see what you're shooting at as you're using that character. Then you'll find all kinds of enemies, all kinds of loot types, different boxes that you can open. All these will have their own loot in them, and you'll want to use this to bring your own gear, set up things, loot things that you want to get. And because it's an extraction game, you're going to want to get all that gear on you, make it to the end, and escape in order to keep that with you and put it in your stash for afterwards. Now, your class is going to have different ways to buff yourself or deal damage or heal yourself if you take damage as well. You'll have all of these consumables. You can bring as much of these as you you want. Again, you risk losing them if you die or another player kills you and takes them, and you'll have that heal there. But if you absolutely need to, you can press G on PC to sit down and start resting. This is kind of like a short rest for D&D, but in real time. So you'll be able to recover HP. If you're a spellcaster and you're out of charges for your spell, you can sit down and your spells will start to recover and you'll get those charges back. So it's like resting at a bonfire and getting those charges back. And then once they're done, you can stand back up. So you have plenty of time to loot. The more you loot, the more you get. You'll eventually run out of space in your inventory, but you'll want to use that time to get the best amount of gear that you can. On top of loot items, there's also interactable items. So like doors that you can open. These doors can be destroyed by some monsters and they can also be locked on it. So say this skeleton's coming to get me, I can close it on him to prevent him from hitting me as he'll shoot the door on the other side, and then the enemies can destroy it and the other players can destroy it as well. So you can use that to your advantage. You can even send enemies on other players and try to attack them as you go. It's partly, it's a PvE, PvP as you try to get the best loot possible. Not only are there basic enemies, but there's also different rarities of those enemies. So when you run into an enemy here, they'll have different qualities. So this skeleton could be normal, it could be blue, it could be red, or it could be ghostly, which is like a nightmarish version. All of them have different HP values, damage values, and some of them, even the nightmarish versions, can have different attack patterns as well. So it's kind of shocking when you run into those. But on top of that, there's also mini bosses and bosses in the levels as well. So as you go around, you might find a mini boss that spawns, like the centipedes or trolls, or like some of the bigger berserker guys, or you can find full bosses that exist in different areas. They're in a fixed location and you can find it, but someone might come in on you while you're fighting it. As the doors are destructible, you also run into destructible objects like boxes, or maybe an entrance to an area is blocked up. You just want to damage it with a melee weapon and destroy it so you can get through. You will also find secret entrances like little levers. Sometimes when you move a chalice, it'll open a door nearby, or if you move a lantern or a lamp or a sconce on the wall, you might be able to open something secret in order to get through that. But you'll also run into hazards as well, like blades, axes swinging by, traps on the ground, that sort of thing. Remember that there are headshots, but there also are very specific hitboxes. You can see that I can just barely miss this target that I'm aiming at. You can do some melee damage to him too. And so that's kind of part of playing some of the faster classes. You can duck, you can dive, you can swing attacks. It's very much like a chivalry type game where the hitboxes matter quite a lot in you aiming and hitting the target. And even characters like the druid can transform into a rat and dodge some shots and transform back. Now let's take a big zoom in on the map to make sure we don't miss this. If you see on the mini map, there is this blue staircase that appears. At some point in the match, this is random now with the latest update, but you'll get these blue torches that appear, a gate will open, and there will either be like a rope or stairs. These are the exits. You don't have to find a portal that's random. These are fixed locations. You'll see this on the minimap, these blue staircases that show up, and that's how you know where to get out. You just want to walk through it. And usually when the exit has been used and consumed, like a landslide will come in and close it up, or like the rope will be gone if you're trying to escape that way. So you have those as options to get through. Sounds like a players coming through. Oh God. And you have also have these players. He's going to kill me. I should have just left. But that's the exit. That's how you go. So you have the blue exit for stairs and the red exit for hell. So you'll actually be able to go up the stairs to escape, and you'll be able to go down into the lower levels with the red stairs, which will mean that you'll face greater enemies, but the possibility of greater loot as well. Now, if you're playing a spellcaster like I'm on my warlock right now, you hold the memory slot and you can just move to the spell that you want. Bards will function the same way. Druids can select their shapeshift form this way. So if you have a focused melee character, you'll select that there. So say we wanted to do Power of Sacrifice, you would need to have a item equipped that allows you to spell cast. This happens a lot for people that try to play the spellcasters and wonder why they can't cast spells. So you hold the memory skill button, in this case E, select the spell that you want, and then you want to have a weapon or item equipped that allows you to cast from it. So for example, a crystal ball that I have here. So when my crystal ball is active, when I right click, I would normally block or use my offhand weapon. But in this case, I would just hold this to cast the spell. Once the spell cast is done, you just let go of right click and then boom, the spell has been cast and you'll get the bonus there from that effect. And you may even find items that are two-handed. So for example, you have a falchion and a crystal ball, which allows us to cast, but you can even switch to a spell book, which has no left click. It's a two-handed spell casting item that allows you to cast and move more freely. So you're more fast casting, but you can't any melee attacks or any fighting that way. So you kind of have to just ride that for that option. And so you have tons of different weapons and customizations you can use for your character that you want to use for the class that you're playing. Now, when you're playing in groups, or even if you're playing in solo, you can resurrect your teammates. If they have armor on, you need to take the armor off their body. So go up to their body, so someone I just killed. So you'll be able to take the armor off their body, and then you'll get a soul heart. You grab this item, you can bring it. Only teammates can resurrect it. But when you have this item, you can take it to a specific platform, like a resurrection stone, and you can use that, and you'll have a blood sacrifice to bring your teammates back into the game. So you have that as an option. Now, just like the blue staircases on the minimap that show you ability to escape and extract from the area, there are red staircases, and these allow you to go lower into the level to a secondary level, which is known as like the Inferno or Hell. And since it's random, once the timer is done, you'll get these red torches and a staircase that goes down versus the staircase that goes up. So blue is back to the tavern, so you can access your stash and go to the merchants. Red is to go down, and once you enter into red, you'll be met with this kind of like rest area with a timer on it. This allows you to organize your items, get all your consumables set up and everything like that. And then you'll be dropped down into the lower levels, which has bigger, scarier enemies, but a lot more loot as well. There's a few of the Inferno maps that all have different enemy types and uniques and stuff like that. Again, you have tons of different loot that you can find down here, but you will find a lot more scary enemies that you'll have to prepare yourself for. So generally, you only go down to the Inferno levels if you have the gear for it and you're ready for it and you're prepared, as you'll face a lot of scary enemies, but the loot could be worth it. And just like with the higher levels, you'll be extracting from this as well the same way. You can see already, even just coming down here for just a little bit, there's a whole bunch of big chests and items down here, but you can see how these are the modified, like the elite spiders, because they're red instead of the normal color. Now, if it turns out you like the game, I would recommend upgrading to the full version of the game, the legendary, that allows you to get all these items. It also will unlock a trader option here, which allow you to, once you hit level 20, unlock this buy from the marketplace. Without it, it's kind of limited, and it's nice to have extra slots and a shared stash, so when you have the extra slots, you can share the gear between your characters. Aside from that, when you exit a match and you have items to sell or things you want to do, go to the Merchants tab, and you'll have all the merchants here that have different functions. Most of these do what you would expect them to. The armorer sells and buys armor. The weaponsmith sells and buys weapons as well. And when you get a bunch of gold, you'll actually want to go to the treasurer and buy these gold sacks that you can fill up with your gold and use this as your currency to either trade with other players or to buy from merchants. So as you get more and more extractions, you'll start filling these up with gold coins and use this at the merchants as well. But keep in mind that when you actually perish, if you were to perish inside of the match, anything that you had on you is now left on your body and you will end up leaving. So if you're at a party, this is why rezzing your teammates is super useful, or you'll want them to grab the good gear off your body and take it with them if they extract, or if you're solo, you'll just lose everything. So the more gear you bring with you, the stronger you are, but if you end up perishing, you'll lose the gear that's with you as well. There is a backup that for some reason isn't set to normal, and if you go to the merchants option here and you see the squire, click on the squire, and on the left side of the screen, you'll see quick prepare and base gear. The base gear is gear that's infinite. You can infinitely respawn this from the squire. They will always pull you and give you this gear. So you want to set up your base default loadout. For some reason, bandages and potions of healing are not set as the default loadout for your character. So just middle click these to bring them over and then set to base gear. So if you wanted to like remove this, or you want to add this here, set to base gear and then equip base gear. So every time you go back into a game, it'll always load these in here. And as you get more and more loot, you'll start storing extra weapons and storing extra gear on your stash that you can then equip and bring with you into the match if you were to lose all your gear. When you have items that you want to sell, you want to go to the merchant that buys them and just middle click in order to bring it over to the sell. And if the merchant doesn't buy that specific item, it'll say not interested in buying. So you want to pay attention to that. You want to use all of these merchants for different reasons. You can even use things like smelting ore that you find inside of the match. And by the way, if you do want to collect ore from the ore nodes that you find, you can find a pickaxe in the match, or you can buy them from the woodsman, which will allow you to pick up this item as a consumable. It actually goes on your belt, bring out the pickaxe, and when you see ore like cobalt ore, copper ore, something like that, you can whack it with the pickaxe and bring the ore back with you. Then take that ore to like the weaponsmith, for example, go to service here at the top, and you can turn those ruby silver ores, cobalt ores, froststone ores into the ingots and then use those for crafting. You also want to pay attention to the quest system as well. All of the merchants in here will have quests that you can unlock. Just go and collect these quests. You can fill them from your stash, complete them, you'll get XP, and this will level up the affinity for your vendor and give you more options for the vendor that they sell and provide to you. And that's Dark and Darker, with all the changes they've made over the last year and all the different options that exist for you, especially with the controversial option, but the base option of free versus having the legendary status as well. So if you have any questions for me, leave them down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.